For centuries, the narrative was absolute. We were told that before 1521, before the Spanish ships appeared on the horizon, the Philippines was a cultural vacuum, a scattered collection of primitive tribes living in huts, with no written history, no laws, and no connection to the wider world. But in 1989, a dredger in a river near Manila pulled up a dirty, blackened piece of metal that changed everything. It wasn't just scrap. It was a receipt. A legal document dated to the exact day, April 21st, 900 A.D. This single object proved that 600 years before Magellan, the Philippines wasn't just civilized, it was a global powerhouse. A land of gold, complex international law, and kings who traded with empires. Welcome to the lost kingdoms of Tondo and Manila. Welcome back to Timewalk History. If you watched our deep dive into Manila in 600 AD, you know the roots of this civilization run deep. But today, we are jumping forward to the Golden Age, literally. We are covering the era between 900 and 1500 AD. This is the era of the thalassocracies, maritime empires that didn't conquer land but ruled the waters. In this episode, we are going to decode the Laguna copperplate inscription to see what it actually says about ancient Filipino laws. We'll walk the bustling docks of the Kingdom of Tondo, where Chinese porcelain was traded for pure gold. And finally, we'll witness the geopolitical chess match around 1500 AD, when the Sultanate of Brunei established a satellite city called Manila to challenge Tondo's monopoly. Forget the history books that start with colonization. The real story begins right now. Let's start with the smoking gun, the Laguna copperplate inscription, or LCI. Found in the Lumban River, this plate is barely the size of a sheet of paper, but its weight in history is immeasurable. It is written in Kawi, a script originating from Java, mixed with Sanskrit, Old Malay, and Old Tagalog. Think about that for a second. In 900 AD, the elites of Manila Bay weren't just literate, they were polyglots. They were using a standardized international script used across Southeast Asia. So, what does it say? Is it a poem? A prayer? No, it's something far more sophisticated. It's a debt release document. The text states that a noble named Namwaran and his children, Lady Angkatan and Buka, are cleared of a debt amounting to 1 kati and 8 suwarnas of gold. In modern terms, that is roughly 865 grams of gold. At today's prices, that debt was worth tens of thousands of dollars. This tells us 3 critical things about pre-colonial society. They had a standard currency. They weren't just bartering fish for rice. They weighed gold with precision. They had a complex legal system. The debt wasn't settled by violence. It was settled by a decree witnessed by officials from different regions. They had social stratification. The fact that Namwaran's children were involved suggests that debt could be inherited, pushing families into debt bondage, a precursor to the Alipan system we see later. Tondo, Pila, Binwangan. The plate mentions the Honorable Chief of Tondo. This is the first historical reference to Tondo, proving it was already a functioning political entity, a kingdom, over 600 years before the Spanish arrived. So, what was Tondo? Located at the mouth of the Pasig River, Tondo wasn't a landlocked kingdom. It was a thalassocracy, a sea-based polity. If you controlled the river mouth, you controlled the flow of goods from the interior of Luzon to the waiting ships of China and Southeast Asia. By the Song dynasty in China, around 1000 AD, trade was booming. Chinese records speak of traders from Ma'i, likely Mindoro or Manila, bringing goods that the world craved. Tondo exported beeswax, pearls, tortoise shells, and most importantly, gold. The Spanish later called this region the Island of Gold for a reason. Gold was so abundant that it was used for everything. The locals wore gold jewelry, gold teeth pegs, and used tiny gold nuggets called piloncitos as cash. These piloncitos are fascinating because they look almost identical to currency used in the Javanese Majapahit Empire. This confirms that Tondo wasn't isolated. It was part of a massive trade network connecting the Indian Ocean to the South China Sea. The ruler of Tondo, the Lakan or Datu, wasn't an absolute tyrant. He was more like a CEO of a massive trading conglomerate. He relied on the loyalty of the Tamawa, the warrior/freeman class, and the labor of the Alapin to keep the economy moving. But Tondo's monopoly wouldn't last forever. As we approach the year 1500, the geopolitical landscape shifts dramatically. A new power player enters the game, the Sultanate of Brunei. Brunei was a powerful Islamic empire, and they wanted a piece of the Luzon trade action. They didn't just want to trade with Tondo, they wanted to control the flow. Brunei established a satellite state right across the river from Tondo. This settlement was called Manila, named after the indigo-producing Nilad plant. This wasn't just a new village, it was a kota, a fortress. Manila brought with it two things that changed the balance of power: gunpowder and Islam. The rulers of Manila, like the famous Raja Suleiman, were related to the Sultan of Brunei. They adopted Islam, not just as a religion, but as a political alliance system that connected them to the Muslim trading world of Malaysia and Indonesia. So, by the time the Spanish arrive in 1521, and later Legazpi in 1570, Manila Bay is in a state of Cold War. You have Tondo, older, steeped in Hindu-Buddhist and animist traditions, on the north bank. And you have Manila, younger, Islamic, and militarized, on the south bank. They were rivals, but they were also relatives. They intermarried, feuded, and traded. It was a complex political drama that rivals Game of Thrones. When we look at the evidence, the 900 AD legal code, the metric tons of gold ornaments, the Chinese porcelain, the bronze cannons, the image of the primitive savage falls apart completely. These were people who understood astronomy. They navigated the open ocean by the stars. They forged steel. They wrote poetry in Kawi and later Baybayin. The tragedy is not that this culture didn't exist. The tragedy is that it was systematically dismantled and buried, leaving us to dig up copper plates from riverbeds just to prove we were here. The Philippines between 900 and 1500 AD was not a waiting room for colonization. It was a thriving, cutthroat, golden age of commerce and culture. From the legal precision of the Laguna copperplate to the fortified walls of Raja Suleiman's Manila, the history is there. You just have to look for it. If you want to know what happened when these two great cities finally faced the Spanish Armada, you need to subscribe to Timewalk History. We are working on a documentary about the Battle of Manila in 1570, and you don't want to miss that. Hit the like button if you learned something new about your heritage today. I'll see you in the next walk through time.